Hi everybody, my name's Tom Chesterton. I'm the Managing Director of Tonic. We're a brand consultancy here in London. This is TonicWith, number 5, and really pleased that you managed to find us again today. Joined today by David Priestley, who is one of the most international employer brands experts that I've met during my career. I'm very excited to have him with us today. Again, what we're going to do as we've been working through TonicWith is to try and get a little bit of inspiration from David, trying to get a bit of insight in terms of his knowledge about the global employer brand market. David, I know you've had a really wide-ranging career. I don't know if you want to give a little potted history into you from a professional perspective.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess I first started in recruitment as a placement from university in Aberdeen. Then after graduating, I moved down to London with agency side. Did it there for a few years before coming back up to Aberdeen to set up a sector for that company. I then set up my own consultancy. I ran that for about 8 years, and I had offices in the UK and in Houston, in Texas. Before going client side to one of my clients, where I spent the last 3 years leading the global talent acquisition strategy.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about your own business. That must have been a bit of a step up from working for somebody else to working for yourself.
Yeah, it was it was a definite learning curve. It was great fun. We had highs, we had lows, but yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it. I guess the rationale came when when there were certain things happening within the business that we didn't feel that were really to the best benefit of our candidates and clients, and so we thought, well, let's take us out of this and we'll do something different. So I actually set it up with my business partner, a colleague in the company that we work for.
Sounds quite familiar to how we started working from a Tonic perspective.
Yeah, there is actually a lot of similarity between the stories that certainly that Mark has spoken about, and also the film guys, that we've worked with. There's been a lot of similarities, and it was great fun.
Wow!
It was building a business from a standing start, and creating a reputation that would take us through the oil and gas industry.
Yeah. So thinking about the oil and gas industry, you mentioned Aberdeen, which is often thought about as being almost its own economy or own economic area in Scotland. Do you think that's true, or is it that different from the rest of the country?
Yes, yeah, it's probably that different from the rest of the UK. Generally the economy doesn't go in the same sync as the rest of industry. It's centred wholly around the oil price. That said, in the last real crash that came 2009, 2008, 2009, that was the time that it was in sync. That global economic downturn came here as well.
Okay, so I know for a while you've been working with Taka, and I wondered if you could. So that move to client side, what drove that?
To be honest, they had some issues within their subsurface recruitment. Now, within the oil and gas industry, subsurface is the most difficult to find talent. It's the geologists, the geophysicists, the reservoir engineers, the people that actually find the oil. So I went there actually to consult. I was in there on a specific assignment. And whilst there, the GVP had come over. It was an Abu Dhabi company, and asked if I would stay and take on the agenda for talent acquisition.
Wow, it's a big job.
Yeah, but it was good fun. It's TAC is a very young company. At that time, the growth agenda was huge. And the talent agenda had to back that up. It was becoming increasingly important for us to not only have the resources that we needed, but ensure that we would have the resources that we could call upon as we were growing so heavily throughout the world.
Okay. Did I ever tell you that I have a degree in geology, and I did quite a lot of my time spent looking at old oil fields and figuring out where there might have been some energy resources in the past?
I had forgotten that, but yes, I do remember Mark actually telling me that, because if I remember rightly, there was some term that came into one of the proposals for.
It was something about UIDs, wasn't it?
That's right. Yes, Uwage.
No, I remember those very well.
Yeah.
So, great introduction. Thank you very much. I think one of the things that has always struck me about great professionals is that there's an interesting person behind that as well. So, tell us a little bit about you as a person. What drives and motivates you?
Wow. I guess your motivators change as life goes on. For me now, my motivator is my family. You know, I've been married for 5 years now, and we have one son at the moment who's 16 months. So, yeah, for me, I'm motivated by them. You know, there's a picture of my wife and my son at my desk. You know, and I always see what they're doing.
So 16 months old is a handful. They don't stay where you put them.
No, definitely not. He actually started walking on his own last weekend.
No way.
Which, a great pleasure for about an hour until we can't find him. But no, he's not gone missing. But yeah.
Yeah, I remember those days very well. So, tell me about your journey through the wonderful world of talent acquisition. So, how did you get into this industry in the first instance? What was it that attracted you?
Nothing attracted me. It was a placement, to be perfectly honest, at university, and you know, I didn't know at that stage what a recruitment company, you know, was really for. You know, you walk into a recruitment company and you think it's just there to find people jobs. You know, it's pretty swift when you get there that you realise that actually you're there to find people for companies, and obviously there is an economic model in that. But that was it, really. I did it as a placement from university. I would say that even when I went back to university, I didn't think that I would go into recruitment professionally. I, for some obscure reason, wanted to go into international banking.
Okay.
I think the obscure reason really was down to money, and my mother had told me that the only way I was going to have the car that I have wanted was either to work for myself or to be an international banker. So,
okay.
And so when I went back into recruitment in London, I went into finance recruitment, and the agenda was that I would build myself a contact base and make a swift and easy transition into the world of finance in London.
Wow.
But then once I got there, I realised that I was actually doing a job that I loved, and in contingent external recruitment, you know, the earning potential is significant. So I never bothered trying to make the switch into finance, and realised that actually recruitment was where I was very happy.
Okay. So was it just about the money, and was it just about the car, or was there a moment when you said, okay, actually this is quite fun, quite interesting, and I'm quite enjoying it as well?
I don't think that there would be a specific moment, but you know, I just realised that, you know, I was happy at work. You know, I never I never had to look at anything else. You know, there was never a call to do anything else. I was just enjoying what I was doing. You know, I guess, you know, when you think back to it, I wouldn't have really enjoyed the world of finance. That's not really me. I'm much more of a people person. I think at heart I am a salesman.
Okay.
You know, so recruitment actually, you know, was very, very well suited to, you know, my psyche type, if you like. You know, it's selling, it's people. There's highs and lows. You know, there's motivation that comes through all of that. So no, it certainly wasn't all about the money. I'm not that shallow.
So when I talk to HR professionals and talent acquisition people particularly, it's often seemed to me that, you know, if you think about talent acquisition as being a sales job, you're selling a career within a company or within the company that you represent.
Mm-hmm.
But people often balk actually at that idea that talent acquisition is a sales role. Why do you think that is?
So when well, firstly, I would say when I say talent acquisition is a sales role, I actually meant recruitment, and by that I mean external recruitment. That very much is a sales role. There is an element of talent acquisition as a sales role in the internal environment, but I can certainly understand why people would balk at that, and some of that might be misplaced, some of it's not. You do have to sell the company and the opportunity, but you need to be very careful that you don't oversell the company and oversell the opportunity, because if the company is not right for the individual,
yeah,
then ultimately the hire is going to fail. The hire might not fail until 9 months plus down the line, by which time the cost of that hire is huge, and therefore they become a regretted loss, and they are going to become a loss for the business, and then it wasn't a good move for the individual. They probably will have factors that they had expected in that position that haven't been realised, and so you're going to have a candidate in the marketplace that hasn't had a good experience with the company, and similarly there's been the cost for the company. So that's a lose-lose situation.
yeah,
so that's why it is a sales job to an extent, but you have to be really careful. And I always said, even in external recruitment, that it was a sales job, but perhaps one of the most difficult sales jobs there is, because you are selling something that has a mind of its own to someone that has a mind of their own. It's not like selling a component, where they can tell on the matrix, whether that is the right thing for their business or not, and then you're just, slotting it in.
Yeah, there's an emotional
Absolutely.
sale you've got to make as well, isn't there?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so we might come back to that actually. I think that's a really interesting concept to explore. Not only the how do you sell the business, but also how do you sell the person into the role as well. How do you make that emotional connection?
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm interested as well is where people have learned from their careers or have had something happen to them during their career that stands out. So I wonder, if you look back over your career, what's the thing you're most proud of having achieved?
So there's probably many things, but the one thing that's in my head at the moment was one evening at close to dusk in Scotland, in late summer, which comes quite late, and it was standing in Golden Square, which is it's one of the oldest squares in the centre of Aberdeen. It's a Georgian square, with the terraced buildings, and that was our first proper office as Source. We'd taken a whole building in the square and refurbished it from top to bottom. And so it was literally the evening that we pulled the blinds down. We'd had the blinds go in, but the logo was on them, but they'd all been raised, because the office was actually opposite the other side of the square from our old company. And so it was literally the day that this office was finished, and the lights had gone in, we turned them on, they lit up the whole building, pulled down the blinds, and I was actually in the square with my mother.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was probably one of the proudest moments. She was just so happy, and yeah, that was a moment in my career that I'll never forget. This company was only 2.5 years old. And had already, grown to be one of the most significant players in the Aberdeen market, and certainly so well known that, when the blinds came down, people knew where we were.
Wow, what an incredible experience that must have been.
Yeah, that was good.
And what about I suppose the flip side of that is that everybody has, as you said already, highs and lows in any career. Is there something that if you could go back and change, you would?
For sure. I guess the answer would be, could I actually change it? Of course there are things that we could have changed. I guess the low for me was the when stores really came into some financial troubles, and that was down to the economic downturn, really. In the oil industry, as I said, it can often work out with the general cycle of the economy, but that time it did hit us, and the oil price had fallen from $130 to about $30 over a couple of days.
Yeah.
What was more difficult for us is actually we had just opened an office in Houston about 5 months before that, and about 3 months before that, so just a few months after opening, the hurricane had come through the Gulf of Mexico and really had decimated that area. So we were hit by a few different factors at the same time. And in hindsight, there are some things that I would have done differently. But that was all such a great and phenomenal learning experience, and I wouldn't trade any of that for the world.
Yeah. So would you? So I mean, the thing I get out of that is that you have to be absolutely resilient in what you're doing, irrespective of circumstance. Just keep on going.
Yeah, absolutely. And you all actually, I think there is one sign on my notice board that you can probably see at a slight angle. My father gave me that when I was about 8, and it says, "You never fail until you stop trying."
Wow, great quote.
Yeah, so that's always on my board, and there's a picture that follows me to any company. My father's in the poultry industry, but this one sits on my desk, and it's just a bird trying to swallow a frog. Working at it, and it just says, "Don't ever give up."
What a great message! What a great.
Yeah.
I've got one which is quite similar, which is a Winston Churchillism, and he had a great script writer, so this probably wasn't nothing to do with him at all. But he said, "If you're going through hell, don't stop."
Yeah.
And same sort of message, I guess. But amazing to have that level of support from your father, giving you those really inspirational messages that early.
And it's amazing where support comes from, where you least expect it. And you really do only know in trying circumstances, who you can really count on. And sometimes it's the people that you least expect.
Yeah, very true. Very true. So I want to focus a little bit more on professional you now, if that's okay. So you've had a broad history, both in terms of being client side and also being supplier side as well. If you look back to when you started your career, how would you summarize the way that the industry has changed and the way that businesses approach acquiring talent has changed?
Well, when I started my career, and I'm going way back to, really I was a junior in a high street recruitment agency, and we used to send CVs to clients, and it was all done by fax. We did have computers in the office. We thought we were quite modern, but none of them were connected to the World Wide Web. So I have seen the whole dawn of the internet age, through my career. When I started, my own consultancy, it was still at that point all about the database that you built, and it was headhunting, and how we built that and how we went out. The tools have changed, technology changes, and you have to keep up with technology, and that's really what has changed the agenda. Social media, social connection, everything that is out there, it's great, and it can make our lives much easier, and also make them much more difficult, because there's so much more data to contend with, and it's what you do with it and how you don't get lost in it. The parameters of the war for talent change, and it's just how you adapt to those at the given time, and how you adapt according to the situations, because they're very, very different in different industries, and actually they can be very, very different within differing disciplines within the same industry.
Yeah, okay. Tell us more about the way that the war for talent has changed. I mean, if I look at it, I think, and certainly going back to when I started my career and I had fax machines as well, and I've got to tell you, nobody told me that I needed to dial 9 for an outside line on fax machines. It caused me so many hassles. Yeah, you wouldn't believe. I had sleepless nights about this. Right, so random. But anyway, but I think about brand and I think about data, as you say. So and there's this kind of toss-up, isn't there? Do I work on the basis of data and plan around big data to be able to bring in strategy, or do I think about brand as being the thing that drives the relationships that I'm trying to build? Do you think is it an either or do you think they're both part of the same solution?
They're both part of the same solution. Everything in talent acquisition is part of the same solution. And in fact, I had a conversation with someone recently who is looking to up the ante in their talent acquisition, and they were asking me about what I'd done at TACA and how we've made it such a success, and they kept coming back to the same question: tell me the one thing that made this a success. And I was trying to continue to come up with a polite way of saying there is no one thing. You need to listen. It isn't that. It is how these things work in partnership, and it's how you juggle these plates and juggle these saucers and have the right teams and the right people, internal and external, all supporting your brand and your strategies, and it all pulls together. So big data is very important, yeah, but if you use all of the sourcing channels effectively and perfectly to come up with the right names and the right people, but you have failed to consider your brand and how you portray the offering of what that the long-term opportunity in your company can be, then that was just completely worthless and a useless investment.
Okay, and one of the things so I agree with that completely. I wonder whether one of the things that I hear a lot, which is around the difficulty that businesses have in making that business scenario stick within, with stakeholders, because they don't necessarily understand the complexities. It's recruitment, right? It's dead easy. Is that something that you've experienced, and how did you overcome that particular challenge, if you did?
Yeah, I guess I've never personally been in a company that have thought, oh, it's recruitment, it's easy. So probably the closest example I can give is actually when I went to TACA. They didn't think that it was easy or were dismissive of it, but they had found themselves in a situation that they hadn't expected. When they were new to the Aberdeen market, there was quite a big push. Aberdeen's a fairly small place, and TACA was a fairly boisterous company. Really, that came from our MD, who is just fantastic. But they rode that wave. They didn't create that wave, it just happened, and they rode that wave. But quite soon, that was old news, and there were other companies that had come in, and they found themselves at the bottom of that wave, and no longer the new kid on the block. and at that point, they struggled to know, well, how do they get that back? What's happened, and what do we do about it? And that's actually when I went in and identified, what the problems were and how we managed to turn that round. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the things that strikes me is that you have to be able to make the reality of the situation clear to be able to make a good business case. But it sounds like the experience you had in TACA was of a business that recognised the challenges that were there, and partly maybe that is because of the closeness of the Aberdeen community. Is that fair to say?
Yes, but also I think we were lucky enough to have progressive leadership at TACA that recognised that there was an issue. Okay. I think if the executive leadership can't recognise that there's an issue, then you could be fighting a losing battle.
Okay.
And I'm all for, we have to educate and let them know what's going on. But if they have the mindset that there's never going to be a problem, then you could be in trouble.
Yeah, okay.
Depending, again, on the industry. To be perfectly frank, in some industries, there isn't a problem. There isn't a war for talent that, crosses every sector. There are only certain things that there are a war for talent in.
No, I quite agree. I think that's true, especially when you look at volume-based recruitment. I think it's more the future talent, and in terms of highly specialized skills, that's where the difficulty sits. At either end, the volume recruiting is volume recruiting, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think you'll tend to find, and there will obviously be exceptions, but you'll tend to find that the leadership in the companies that have got these burning talent agenda desires to build and to grow and to think about the future are the ones that will recognize they have to invest in it, and the ones that don't, that see recruitment as something that is easy, that there's no problem with, they don't have the same issues anyway. The reason that they think that it's easy is because it has been easy for them.
No, fair enough. And I guess that part of that is having as you say, an executive team that is boisterous and keen and energetic and manages to make that the culture of the business as well. That helps. Yeah,
for sure. For sure. I mean, if you don't have the ear of of the people that you're working on behalf of, then that would make things difficult. I've never been in that affected by that, so much. I didn't ever think that I would come to the other side. But when I came in and did this, even the global team were great, but the MD for the UK business, I actually was only a couple of desks away from his office. I used to interview with him in his office, often, and he was a very, very empowering boss to have.
Wow.
And it's very much about, well, this is the issue that we have. Here are the resources. Go away and do something with it.
Okay.
So that was a great place to be.
That's my favourite type of leadership. That kind of here's an objective, go and achieve it however you need to.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I remember once, having a chat with him and saying, what floats your boat? What makes all of this work? And he says, quite honestly, my happiest moments are when I sit in the leadership team and I watch them having a debate, and getting heated. And I says, why do you like that so much? He says, because I realise the passion that is in that room and that they are all there and can all do this. He says, and it's just great to watch and it's great to see what we've built.
Wow. It sounds like a great guy.
Yeah, he is.
Cool. So I want to look a little bit ahead now, I guess. So in your experience and your kind of the depth of knowledge you have of how the industry has changed in the past, what do you see the challenges for the industry and talent acquisition in more general terms being over the next maybe 4 or 5 years?
Again, that's going to be different for different companies and different industries. And it can all change if there's new technologies that that come on board. But as things are, I think the challenge is going to be for people to continue to keep all of the plates spinning and to focus on everything and give importance to every channel of the journey. Everything is cyclical. We're seeing a lot of companies think about insourcing. A lot of companies continue to think about outsourcing. So, that's still here. It's about companies understanding what their requirements actually are. I think a challenge will be not to think that such and such has worked for someone else. Let's just try and copy it and do the same. It's to figure out, well, what are our challenges and why are they there? And do we want to do about it? And for that you need to keep your people engaged, and you need them to be part of the decision making, because if they're not, then they're not going to be the people that are going to help you achieve what you need to achieve for the company. Technology is going to be key. Data is just going to get bigger and bigger. There's going to be more and more, and so we're going to have to work in partnership with IT to see how we deal with that and how we manage that. And I mean, Tom, you know that we've been talking about websites and how we integrate our media and our websites and everything. That's key. And also, the world is becoming more and more global. We're seeing people move, closer and closer. So,
yeah, and I guess with your global experience, and I know you've worked in most countries of the world, in terms of taking that out. How do you see that moving forward? Because I see lots and lots of almost consolidation in terms of different geographies. So, the Middle East acting as a region, for example, Southeast Asia and Europe was acting as almost as different hubs, but with areas of expertise within those hubs. Is that how you see it as well, or do you see countries becoming further apart and more individual almost, I guess?
The last point that you made is key. It's countries being individual, but that doesn't necessarily stop you having, using, sharing and using technology to be global. The key is, though, to recognize that culture exists and dominates in each of the centers that you're going to be looking at. So, you could certainly have just a few centers, which deal with most of your recruiting, at least the processing, but those people have got to understand the culture of the area in which they're specialising. They're going to have to, at some point, have some on-the-ground experience there, whether it's going in and out, because they need to build their relationships. And they need to, realise what is important, to the people that they're dealing with as candidates and to the people that they are servicing as clients. And what is important to them is often very different to the business culture in the area that they sit, if indeed they are servicing an international location.
Yeah, okay. So I often talk about the importance of segmenting market and an audience actually as a way of being more effective in communication. And I guess that applies both to internal audiences but also to external candidates as well, in terms of making the message that you have as powerful as you can make it, because it's directly relevant to the people you're trying to talk to.
Yeah.
So if you, I'm going to put you on the spot. If you had a favourite market to work in, I guess those of us who have worked internationally always have a favourite country to work in or to work with. Where does your heart lie?
I couldn't answer that.
Okay.
I couldn't. There are things that I like and things that I dislike about the working practices in every country that I've worked in, including our own. But maybe it's just that I'm an optimist. I generally like to see the best in people and places and things, and so I always cherish the great memories. Yeah, so I mean, I guess if you'd asked me that a few years ago, I'd spent a significant amount of time working in Texas, and I love Texas. I think Houston is a great place. That said, for the last few years, I have predominantly, been working in the Middle East. TAQA is the Abu Dhabi National Energy Company, and so I've grown a great affinity for the people in that part of the world. It's a fairly complex and procedural part of the world to work in, and you need to get to grips and understand it. Emiratization, for example, being one, and then more recently, we've entered Kurdistan, the Kurdish area of Iraq, where Again, there's just completely different working cultures and things that we have to look at. But for me, the joy of that is actually taking some time to understand what that's about, understand the people, understand their issues, and then working to common goals once you establish what those common goals are.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think I love the Middle East. I think it's a fascinating environment to be in because there are rules, but there are no rules at the same time. So it's a really enjoyable experience to work there. I think I've never been to Kurdistan, but I think that that's maybe an exception to the rule in terms of where most business is done. There is a framework that you have to work within, but everybody's so optimistic as well.
They are, but it can still be very bureaucratic, and that's not meant negatively. Again, I think what's important, is to always not just think of what the problems are, look at what they are, but understand the challenges and understand, why those challenges perhaps exist. And if you understand why the challenges exist, then it makes you loathe them less. It makes you understand them more, and you understand why they're important to that people and to the people in that area, and that makes you then support those challenges and want to support those challenges. But yeah, I think there are some areas of the Middle East that it may appear that there's no rules, but certainly my experience is, I've been working essentially for a government company there, so it's really understanding what is going on and how we deal with that, has been key.
No, fabulous. I do really enjoy it, and I'm quite jealous that you spent so much time out there.
It's fantastic. Yeah, I think Mark enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, I think so too. He told me all sorts of stories about the drive up to Erbil and red rocks and blue rocks.
Yeah,
that's for another time.
But then at the same time, I spent a fair amount of time in Calgary in our North American operations there, and thoroughly enjoy that as well. That's just a great city to fly into and to work in. It's about making the most of the location that you're in.
Yeah, I agree completely. So a couple more questions for you really quickly. I want to get a sense about who you think is the employer that's doing talent acquisition best at the moment. Is there an organisation that stands out for you?
I guess you really see it in the industries in which you operate. So for me, I think BP are doing pretty well in what they've done in the oil industry. They've got a really good good brand, good presence. I think they have led on their how they use RPO. They haven't, from what I see, got an RPO that works across the board, but they use a number of different RPOs in areas to which they need to and to which it works, but don't in areas that they don't. So that makes good sense to me. Another industry that I see a lot at the moment because of what we're looking at doing is pharmaceuticals. So I really like what Roche has done recently. They've spent the last few years developing their internal recruiting. So they haven't gone down the RPO. They've actually taken everything in-house and built talent scouts.
Okay.
Which a lot of companies have got sourcers, but I think these guys are actually going a level beyond sourcers. They really are headhunter level, search firm level people that really are building specific relationships with a global talent pool. Okay. I think that's a really innovative approach, and it's working well for them.
So is that how you see direct sourcing moving on, with that sort of level of expertise in-house?
It depends. As I said before, I think you have to understand what your particular challenge is and then come up with a solution that addresses that challenge. And I think that's what they've done quite well to do. And similarly with their branding, they've developed a really strong EVP that I think is really working well, and they have that used well.
Okay, wow, cool.
Outside of those areas, it's difficult for me to say, because you then really are just talking about the brand of companies, and companies that appear to look great. I'd really have to spend some time looking at what's going on to understand if the processes that work in the background are adding the value and are delivering what they need, or if they just look shiny.
Yeah, and that's back to your earlier point about brand and process working in tandem to create a great candidate experience, but also a great recruiting process, I guess.
Yeah, because from an internal perspective as well, we have to remember that we may be internal, but we are still a service, and it is still imperative that we have client satisfaction, and not be shy of using the word client.
No, I think you're exactly right. Absolutely right. No arguments at all. So just looking forward then, so the next 12 months, what does that hold for you?
So we're at I guess, I don't know is the answer to that. I'm on a journey, and looking forward to what happens. So speak to me in 12 months and we'll see where I am. I've actually recently left TACA. The current agenda in the company is not one of growth, so it wasn't the right place for me right now. So, but again, as I said, I like to look at everything optimistically. My wife is from the south of Germany, so we are taking this opportunity to consider moving our family base to a closer proximity to the family. So. Ideally, we would like to go to somewhere in the German-speaking part of Switzerland, and then maybe base ourselves there. Rebuild our family base there, and then maybe do some more international work until my son is at the right age for school. So. Open on industries at the moment. Pharmaceuticals is the big thing there, so I've been speaking to a lot of people in the pharma industry. But there's still some really exciting other industries, that are headquartered out of Switzerland. So I'm open to anything. And at the same time, there's irons in the fire that aren't in Switzerland itself. We may end up staying in Aberdeen. We may end up somewhere completely different in Europe or the Middle East.
Well, let's be frank, it's very exciting to have that level of opportunity, right? So wish you good luck with that.
Thank you.
So before we go, there's two things I want from you, if that's okay. So the first one is how people can get in touch with you if they want to follow you on social, or they just want to have a chat. And if there's anything that you want to leave as kind of parting words of inspiration for anybody listening to this from a talent perspective.
So I guess to keep it to follow, I'm on Twitter, although I have to admit I don't use it very well. I guess that's me caught. But it's I think my tag is @DavidMcDavid. So I'm a Scotsman, so my father is David and my son is also David. So Mac, for anyone that doesn't know the Scottish language, means son of. So it's David McDavid. LinkedIn is probably the best thing for business. So I'm at David J. Priestley. And parting shot for talent, it probably is that. It's about thinking of everything together and joining everything together. So we've spoken about joining everything within talent acquisition, which is critically important. And we've spoken about that because obviously, I was the global head for talent acquisition. But that position also saw me, on the talent management team, and talent acquisition is just one of the strands of talent management, which is also just one of the strands of HR. And again, I was on the leadership team for HR on the whole. And then HR is just one of the areas for the whole company, And so it's just to step back, sit back and look and think, okay, well, how will this actually add value to what we're trying to achieve as a business? And not to just get lost in the talent acquisition part of it, but really figure out how this actually is going to contribute to the goals, the overall goals of the company, and how you can then pass those goals across to the people that you interact with.
Wow, great thoughts. Thanks, David. I really like that idea of not only thinking about how the areas that you're concerned with can be joined up to be much more effective as a business tool, but also starting to think about how that impacts on the whole business as well. I think that's critical. So, thanks very much for your time today. Really appreciate you spending so much time with us. I found it fascinating, and hopefully you have too. We will see you next time. Thanks very much.
Sounds good.